Hey, Amy,
Hmm.
did you hear about this one? You know how I joke a lot about Jesus possibly being a zombie?
We all do, yeah.
What if it's not as far-fetched as you think it is?
Hmm. My heathen ass wouldn't know any better.
Right? But here's the catcher, too. There's a lot of similarities in the voodoo culture.
Interesting.
So, today's episode, we're going to discuss how Catholicism is very close to voodooism. If that's
Nice.
even a word. Is voodooism a word? Or is it just voodoo?
I believe it's just voodoo, and I believe it's Catholicism. But again, my heathen ass, I have no idea. As I've said before, I am one, not an expert, I'm a nerd. But also, I don't know everything. I'm just a know-it-all.
Yeah, when it comes to religious studies, that's something I don't excel in. But you know who does? Shanna. We'll have to get
Nice.
Shanna involved one of these days because I know nothing about religion.
Yeah.
But anyway, so I'm Dawna,
I'm Amy.
and this is Did You Fear About This One?
Yes. Where we are expert. No, we are not
Not experts.
experts.
Nope,
We are nerds.
not experts. Nerds! All right, so as I mentioned earlier, I was doing a little deep diving here, trying to prove my point that Jesus is a zombie. Now that we have Easter rolling around,
Naturally.
comes back from the dead. The dude's dead for 3 days, and he comes back. Textbook definition of zombie.
I mean, or like an Anne Rice vampire, maybe, took a couple days to transform, shit out his organs as they did in the Vampire Diaries. She wrote about, or not Vampire Diaries, Interview with the Vampire.
Mhm.
I think Vampire Diaries is a different thing, but she did write about Jesus later, so
Yeah, so I'm starting to think that there is more truth to what the Bible is leading us to believe. So I will be supporting my facts later on in the episode. So the first thing is let's discuss the textbook definition of a zombie.
okay.
So handy dandy note cards. All
Yes.
right, zombie. A corpse said to be revived by witchcraft, especially in certain African Caribbean religions. Also can be defined as a person or reanimated corpse that has been turned into a creature capable of movement but not of rational thought.
Random question
Might
to
have a random answer.
immediately derail us off of topic. So for the people who are, let's say, super against science
Okay.
and, believing that like interfering with that whole process of like life and death is witchcraft, regardless of whether you're a doctor or not, would someone that's revived in a hospital be considered a zombie to them because they're brought back with what they think is witchcraft?
That is a really good question. I truly don't have an answer for you on that one. Now, but based on the definitions we just had, yeah, that would be a zombie because definition number two, a person or reanimated corpse that has been turned into a creature capable of movement but not rational thought. Okay, so technically I just debunked my own thing. No, just they were just reanimated.
Well,
But if they come back, if they come back through medical practices, hopefully they got rational thought.
yeah. To get really morbid, I mean, that's, you could kind of say like somebody that's brain dead, but they're not
Yeah.
really capable of movement at that point. Doesn't it say capable of movement? What was
Hmm.
it?
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
capable of movement, but no rational thought.
So then no on that one.
Okay, so you're just reanimated.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Yeah. I'm sorry. I tried to make it so that like, cuz with people getting, like really awesome prosthetics and stuff like that
Yeah.
now, like we basically have androids, which awesome for you guys. Uh I mean, at least it's something in a world that shits on everybody who is different.
Hmm.
But I guess anybody who's been revived before, I guess you're not a zombie. I'm sorry. I tried.
Yeah. Huh. I wonder what the definition of that would be. Because, like, if you're technically dead, but you get reanimated, like, is there a definition not quite zombie? Like, are you, like, pseudo zombie?
Mm.
Like, what if you meet, like, part of the criteria, but not all the criteria? Okay, we
I
can
think it
obviously.
I think it probably depends on whether we're going with the like actual voodoo culture definition of zombie, in which case none of this is real, or if we're going with like a modified like George A. Romero Walking Dead, split the hairs kind of zombie definition, in which case whatever you make the quote unquote canon of that specific definition, that specific world or alternative world, yes, but yeah.
All right, I'm going to have you take a stab at the dark. Because why not? Do you know when the first time the word zombie, Zombie, was in print?
No.
All the way back to the year of 1819 was the
Huh.
first recorded evidence of the word zombie as we know it today.
Interesting.
Yeah, just
I was kind of thinking it would be like 50s or something, but
yeah. I was thinking something a little bit more recently because as you mentioned earlier, George A. Romero is Night of the Living Dead, but no, 1819 was the first documented written evidence of the word zombie
interesting.
used in that context as well.
Nice.
So where do we get that from?
I don't know.
The good old Haitian voodoo.
Nice.
So the word zombie minus the E has been used in Haitian voodoo cultures for quite some time.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we're talking years before 1819.
Yeah.
That one is where the Haitian voodoo definition comes from. A person believed to be had been brought back to life by sorcery.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where we got like the first definition I mentioned earlier. So that's the Haitian definition of voodoo.
Right.
So let's do a little bit of a history lesson, as I mentioned. So the word zombie, as we know it today, with the E, started in 1819 roughly. Well,
Mm-hmm.
that's first evidence. But there's Haitian voodoo portion. So 17th century, the French were the ones that took over half of the island known as Haiti today.
Yeah.
We all knew that. Basic world science, world history, right?
Yeah.
Anyway, side note, the vast majority of French are Catholics. So, starting to pick up a trend here, okay? Pay attention because it gets fast. So,
That's because before Martin Luther, the one who first translated the Bible into, I believe it was German, basically a common tongue, so that
mm,
you weren't required to go to a church and rely on a priest to translate it for you. You basically had no other choice in like government mandated religions and things like that. Like the whole country was under that. That's why this country is supposed to have separation of church and state, but we have in God we trust on our money and in our pledge and all the shit that we shouldn't fucking have. So,
yeah.
yeah.
So anyway, the French, they invaded half of the country known as Haiti today. They brought thousands of slaves from Africa and they worked in the sugar plantations. So it wasn't just a United States thing, but once again, we all knew that from world history. So this isn't really new.
Yeah.
So voodoo was a religion that incorporated African, Caribbean, and Catholic influences. So as I mentioned earlier, this is where it gets a little fast paced. So the voodoo culture has a lot of mixed elements of those three.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, there was a zombie myth within the religion because of how harsh the conditions were working on the plantations, which, yes, the exact same working conditions, humid temperatures, hot heats, long hours, abuse,
Yeah.
a lot of abuse.
Abuse is a light word for that. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm trying to keep it PG.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to discuss the already, especially before Easter.
Yeah.
But anyway, so there was a myth that because the conditions were so harsh, that people would rather return back to the African place where they came from, depending on where in the Africa they were from, than to be turned back into a zombie to keep working on the plantations.
Yeah.
So they felt like if you committed suicide, you would be turned into a zombie to continue working.
Oh,
So as a way of,
that's
keeping
horrible.
Yeah. So, in order to keep the morale and not commit suicide, there was a myth running around that if you were to commit suicide, that you would be stuck working on that plantation.
I'm gonna throw random, again, disclaimer, I'm a complete heathen. I was raised culturally Christian, meaning we had, Christmas tree, dyed eggs, and things like that, but I've never owned a Bible or read it or really gone to church. I think I can count the number of times I've been to a church service on like two hands. And all of that was like after I got married. Um, but um, I'm gonna go with that was probably a lot of the Catholic influence of, suicide being a mortal sin
Mm-hmm.
and the like Inquisition type of crap of convert people or die.
Mm-hmm.
So, in order to keep the product that the slavers had, quote unquote, from taking and out, that would honestly be more humane than actually doing the fucking labor that they had them doing. You force them to convert and, you know, tell them that they can't take that out.
Yep.
That's where
And
I would, you know, murder you in exchange for you murdering me. We just both go out in style. But I completely understand how also that's, murder is also probably a mortal sin. So,
yeah, I'm pretty sure it is. But
yeah.
yeah, so that was actually my next talking point, kind of merging the two religions that in in a normal person's eyes, they see voodoo and the Catholic Church being completely separate, absolutely nothing in common because there's that, stigma that voodoo is all witchcraft and black magic and this and that, which is absolutely not the case.
No.
Just like any religion, you do have your cons, but the voodoo religion is very similar to the Catholic Church. And as we progress further in this podcast, we're going to talk a little bit more into detail about the similarities between the two.
Yeah.
Now, I got that information from Ohio State University. They
Hmm.
had like this whole thesis on the voodoo mythology and things like that, and that's where I stole that source from. But I'm that's stealing because I gave credit
No.
to Ohio
Yeah.
State.
Yeah.
So anyway, so voodoo practitioners actually blended all those different religions to give the illusion that the slaves were
Converted.
trying to convert into
Yep.
Christianity. Christianity.
Christianity?
Yes.
That
Thank
one.
you. See,
Yeah.
so that was like a whole facade, but that's where the whole voodoo religion was starting to come into effect as well. So,
Yep.
as I mentioned earlier, we're going to talk a little bit now about the differences between, or actually similarities in this case, of voodoo and the Catholic Church.
Yeah.
So, what beliefs do you think that they have in common?
Saints?
That's an option, yes.
Um, that's kind of all I got.
All right. So in regard,
And really the only reason that I know about the Saints is because of our trip to New Orleans and like some of the tours that we did, but like before that I had no idea.
so regarding the beliefs in the voodoo culture,
Hmm.
they have a supreme god.
Okay.
Then you got the spirits who act as an intermediary.
Hmm.
In the Catholic Church, there is one God in three persons, known as the Trinity.
Yeah.
So there's the beliefs on that one. Regarding the hierarchy, in the voodoo culture, you've got priests, the spirits, which are also very similar to the Catholic Church because the Catholic Church now has the Pope,
Hmm.
bishops, cardinals, saints, priests, and other orders. So you got the chain of command, if you will, with
Right.
the Catholic Church.
Hmm.
Regarding the spirits, as I mentioned a couple times, is the voodoo spirits are to influence our lives. They provide us ideas. They also provide us with prompting good choices and making right decisions. A little more on the optimistic side compared to how we interpret voodooism or voodoo as being a negative thing,
Yeah.
conjuring bad spirits and
And
putting
that's a
hexes.
lot of the like whitewashing of everything that is different than the Anglo fucking what no it's the white Anglo-Saxon Protestant wasp shit
Mhm.
of, like private schools and all of that crap. Anything different than that is or has been in the past very like demonized and
Mhm.
stuff. And then in I'm only going to say this specifically for like indigenous cultures in America because I don't remember the specifics on like, black cultures and things like that with slaves and things, but I do know, I mean, obviously they were brought here and forced to convert and stuff, but I do
Mhm.
know with like the indigenous cultures, like it was literally illegal for indigenous people in the United States to practice any of their religions until like early 1900s. They were
Absolutely.
forced to not. And right now, I know specifically in Canada, this is a huge thing, and I know it's also a thing here, but we're just not publishing it as much, but we're digging up um, a lot of those like church-run schools and things like that that just have hundreds of bodies of students who never made
Yeah.
it out of there.
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
There was one that just recently came out where there was like 1,700 bodies.
hmm
We'll have to do another podcast on that one because that's gruesome. Just gives you an idea of how sinister the church could actually be at times.
Oh yeah, and
Um,
then just all of the like native politics and the missing and indigenous
mhm.
women and children and things like that. Like it's fucked. In some of my research for the dates episode that I was doing earlier, and I didn't write this date down because it was just too fucking depressing, but there was a date in April back in, I don't know, 1800s or whatever, where Washington, D.C., you know, basically legally freed slaves, but gave about $1 million to former owners as compensation. And I'm like, yeah, reparations when, my guys? Like, the fuck?
Mhm.
Like, we, no, there's still people who, no,
Yeah.
are directly affected by this. I mean, still, like, no, no, it's fucked. Anyway, yeah.
A little on the sidetrack there.
Little angry ranting of God damn it, I hate people.
Spirits in regards to the Catholic Church,
hmm
they're known as angels.
Yeah.
Well, we all know about angels. They're, you know, Im- um, immortal beings that they're just there. They're created by God to literally serve and worship Him.
Random other question, and I
Uh
don't know if you
oh.
know
Uh
this.
oh.
So, are you familiar with like quote unquote canonical angels versus like the fluffy feather ones?
Are you talking about like the Midnight Mass angel where he's like a vampire?
No, so I'm talking about like the like made of wheels and thousands of eyes and wings,
Oh,
like kind of grotesque quote
yeah.
unquote style angels.
Yeah,
Are those Catholic? Do we have any idea?
that I don't know. We'll have to look into that. Maybe editing Amy. Can we find some evidence?
I think we'll maybe do that in another episode
Good idea. Even better.
because I think that would be cool. Should do like a just an episode on like angels in different cultures and stuff.
Angels versus demons.
Yes. Future.
Haha. Stay tuned for that one, guys. Anyway, so rituals. Obviously we know that the voodoo culture is very known for their rituals.
Mm-hmm.
They got the singing, they got the dancing, the drumming, the music, theatrics. Another word I can't.
Theatrics?
Yeah. See, I don't speak well. I write well, but I
It's
don't speak
okay.
well.
It's okay.
Um, so obviously we know that they're very well known for their rituals, but we also know that the Catholics are known for their rituals.
Yes.
Sit, stand, kneel, sit, stand, kneel. They break out in song. Like every other conversation is now a song. I did attend Catholic Mass a couple times with my ex-husband's family.
Mm-hmm.
Um, wow, y'all have some really great knees.
I think I attended a Catholic mass once as a child and had nightmares about it. Um, Kind of related to this episode, I had a nightmare about me being dressed in like this frilly white outfit with little lace gloves and things. Because
Okay, that is very nightmare fuel.
yeah, I was treated as a little doll by certain family members when I was little, especially for anything regarding pictures. Um, Curly hair does that. But so I remember being there in that outfit, and I definitely had like pictures of me in that outfit. So possibly was a real thing. But I remember like looking up the main aisle and seeing the cross with like crucified Jesus on it, like dripping blood, and I'm like, what the fuck is that?
Right.
And then I remember like a giant bathtub and Jesus crawling out of the bathtub covered in blood. And I'm like, what the fuck? Like I was little, like, 5, 6, maybe less. So I have no idea where reality and obviously like I'm doubting somebody crawled out of a fucking tub of blood in Northern California back then, but like I don't know where the separation lies. I just know that tiny me was fucking terrified.
That is definitely nightmare fuel. Very much.
So that was my like weird religion adjacent childhood.
Wow. But in regards to like the Catholic Church and their rituals, I mean, as you mentioned too, like the bathtub, you got the baptisms, and then you got like religious ceremonies for weddings. Like they have a lot of rituals as well for different things.
And you've got wine and confession and the whole rosary beads, which I think is fascinating. Um yeah.
But here's also hardcore evidence that the two, religious aspects are nearly one and the same, is they have like identical objects that they use on a regular basis for their ceremonies and rituals. That being, altars, candles, and sacred symbols. So when you think of Voodooism, you think of, the candles, the incense. Same thing with the Catholic Church. You've got somebody throwing holy water on people. You got the incense. You've got the golds all around. You've got crosses. You've got the altars. You got the candles that you can light to
Memorialize.
Thank you. Gosh, I really cannot talk.
You've also got skulls.
Yes.
Catholic churches and things in Europe are known for like ossuaries and
Yes.
like there's that whole bone church that looked really cool. That has to be Catholic, right?
Totally Catholic. Because I mean, as we mentioned earlier, the French are known for their being the Catholics.
Yep.
So very much a lot of similarities between the two. But as we mentioned earlier, so the known features between each religion is the Voodoo religion is known for their magic and healing powers. They use them to seek guidance. They also use it for healing or protection.
Yeah.
Guess what the Catholics do? Same thing.
Yeah.
I mean, it's done in a different manner. The Voodoos, they practice and they've got like a religious ceremony that has like a process. The Catholic Church, you're praying. You don't pray to the angels. You don't pray to the God. Or pray to God. I'm sorry. He's not a God. He's the, you know what I'm saying.
God with a capital G.
Thank you. You can ask the angels for assistance, but you're not really praying to anybody. You're just asking for assistance.
Yeah.
So obviously a lot of similarities. Now, here's one thing. I got sucked down the rabbit hole.
That's fun.
I got sucked down the rabbit hole big time, and I enjoyed every moment of it. So while the word zombie is not exactly noted in the Bible, there's a lot of references that suggest zombies in the Bible.
Interesting.
Yeah, so I found this handy dandy website. You guys might want to check this out because it was very fascinating in my opinion. And please forgive me, I don't know how to read Bible verses. So if I say anything incorrectly, if I say chapter, verse, whatever incorrectly, please forgive me. But check out this website, BibleStudyTools.com. There is a section here called Bible verses about zombies. So once again, this is BibleStudyTools.com if you're interested here. So I'm going to just scroll through and I'm going to find a couple of them that I was like, yep, that's totally a zombie. All right. The first one up. This is from the book of Isaiah, chapter 26, verse 19 to 20. Quote, "But your dead will live, Lord. Their bodies will rise. Let those who dwell in the dust wake up and shout for joy. Your dew is like the dew of the morning. The earth will give birth to her dead. Go, my people, enter your rooms and shut the doors behind you. Hide yourselves for a little while until his wrath has passed by." Rise, my zombies, rise.
Interesting.
I know, right?
Yeah.
But they don't say zombies. But that's totally what they're talking about, right? Reanimated corpses. All right, sorry, I got a little excited by that one. Um, this one's actually pretty hardcore. In the book of Revelation, chapter 9, verse 6, during those days, people will seek death, but will not find it. They will long to die, but death will elude them.
Rude.
Right?
So, oh, but does that mean the Grim Reaper finally gets a vacation during Revelations? Would that be the end of times? So he gets to take a break? Or they?
That's kind of how it sounds. Well, but then again, I mean, people are still dying. They're just not truly dying. They're coming back.
Yeah.
So I guess, yeah, I guess Death's just not doing his job.
Yeah. He gets to take a vacation and like watch everything like from a beach with a little cocktail or something.
Well, I mean, I guess in the Grim Reaper world, they might have like a union at this point. I mean, with all the hard work they have to do.
Yeah.
So maybe he was like on a Union 15.
Yeah. Or just literally taking a vacation for once.
Hopefully it was nice. Got some skin on the bone. All right. So here's another one that I think is pretty hardcore. In the book of Daniel, chapter 12, verse 2, multitudes who sleep in the dust of the earth will awake, some to everlasting life, others to shame and everlasting contempt.
That's what was that in?
That's in the book of Daniel, chapter 12, verse 2.
I'm just confused. Like, I thought, like, in Christianity and stuff, and again, this is where my heathen ass is confused, by all religions. I'm fascinated by all religions, but I thought, like, when you died, you went to either heaven or hell, or whatever, or purgatory.
Yeah,
Somehow
there's
that
purgatory
falls in to some of the Christianity flavors, I think.
somewhere in there.
Yeah,
I'm not
but
very familiar with it either.
but then you're supposed to rise again and then go back to one of those places? Question mark.
Vicious cycle?
So like you get to be back for like 30 seconds as a pause and then you go back. I don't understand.
Well, I mean, in that thought process, I mean, Jesus, they killed him,
So where was he for 3 days? Just floating in the ether?
figuring out where he was going to be going. Got his work assignment, came back, and
Maybe got into a fight with his dad.
there's a possibility, sure. So here's another one. Now, if this doesn't make a damning evidence that zombies are in the Bible, I don't know what else will. All right, you ready for this one? Brace yourself. Like, this is totally, totally horror. In the book of Jeremiah, chapter 19, verse 9, I will make them eat the flesh of their sons and daughters, and they will eat one another's flesh because their enemies will press the siege so hard against them to destroy them.
The fuck, Bible? You gonna eat your children.
So now we jumped over the shark entirely. So we went from being a zombie, because there's nothing saying that they're going to, be dead.
Just cannibalizing.
Yeah, we're just going to jump to cannibalism now.
Because why? What was the end of that?
Because their enemies will press the siege so hard against them to destroy them.
So because you're getting invaded, you're gonna eat your wife and kids to question mark question mark question mark profit? That's giving me underpants gnomes from South Park. Collect underpants question mark
That is
profit.
one. Collect underpants. That is two. That is three. Profit!
Exactly.
Yes, I do that one too well.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're welcome.
That's legitimately though giving me like underpants gnomes because I don't understand like is it just to like you eating your wife and children is supposed to be better than like them falling victim to strangers doing horrible things to them? I mean, I feel like there's better ways to kill your wife and children and then yourself to avoid that than eating them. Unless you kill them real quick and then eat them. I don't know why I just immediately went to like a vor situation where you're like eating them while they're alive. Never mind me. We're gonna blame it on horrible fiction.
All right, so here's another one. This one also is textbook zombie definition. In the book of John, chapter 5, verse 28 to 29. In 28, Quote, do not be amazed for this, or excuse me, let me restart. Quote, do not be amazed at this, for a time is coming when all who are in their graves will hear his voice. Verse 29, and come out. Those who have done what is good will rise to live, and those who have done what is evil will rise to be condemned. So they're saying, okay, you've done good. You get to come back, get to hang out with us, get to hang out again. But if you've done bad, you get to come back, but we're going to punish you once again.
We're gonna send you back to hell. So you come back for like a 5-minute break and then go back to the rack and the 7 layers or whatever the fuck.
Yeah. So,
I don't understand.
anyway, so yeah, you got the voodoo people who are just like super cool. They're doing their own thing. They got their own practice, their own religion. They're all about like, making sure that you're doing well. Yes, once again, in every religion you've got those that are doing well, but then you also have those bad apples that are causing mischief and things of that nature, doing in the name of the word. I mean, think of how many wars have been fought in the name of God.
All of them?
Mm-hmm. How many wars were started by voodoo practitioners? Yeah. But then you have the Catholic Church that's saying, oh, we're better than the voodoo people, blah, blah, blah.
Because
But
racism.
But we're one and the same.
But we don't see it that way because racism and eugenics.
Make it make sense. So anyway, what I was getting at is, so with the definition of zombies and what we know of Jesus dying on the cross, coming back 3 days later, zombie.
Yeah.
I think I made a hardcore point. And because they don't want to admit that zombies were a thing, they just left out the word zombie, but everything that they're describing in the Bibles in different various books are exactly what a zombie did.
Yeah, that's fair.
So that is my hill that I'm going to stand on, and Jesus was a zombie.
That's fair. I have a couple random.
Might have some random answers for you.
Okay.
Let's do
So like I was mentioning to Dawna before we started filming this, I've never really understood the difference between prayer and spell work. So, what I mean by that is, once again, grew up heathen. I was taught the little, like, now I lay me down to sleep prayer thing. Didn't really understand it, didn't really follow through, but that was a thing that I was taught and stuff.
Mhm.
But, got older, got into like paganism, Wicca, things like that, started reading those books. And in those, you are looking for direction, for guidance, for assistance. And you get together with your group of fellow believers in your ceremonial thing. You wear specific clothing or not. You may be skyclad, quote unquote, which is naked. um, but you get together and basically perform a ritual that may or may not involve things like burning candles or incense, which is also a thing with Catholicism,
Right?
and ask for assistance from the goddess or gods or the universe. So how the fuck is that different?
So, because I have to know the answers, like I'm getting tired of not knowing answers.
Yes.
Thank God we have the internet on our phones. All right, so key differences, prayer versus spell work.
Yes.
So the focus on prayer is communication with a higher power.
Uh-huh.
A spell is action and manipulation of the forces.
Not necessarily.
The internet lied to me.
Well, it depends, but like I know it kind of just depends on what type of spell work you're talking about. So if it's somebody who is a practitioner who has like a specific goddess or god that they quote unquote work with, they are still ultimately appealing to that entity for assistance with achieving that. Which, to be honest, like if you're at your loved one's bedside and you're praying for assistance, How the fuck is that different?
Well, I guess so. With communication to a higher power with prayer,
Mm-hmm.
you're passively asking for assistance. You're requesting assistance. Whereas a spell, you're more of active, like you're doing your ceremony
Ritual
to
thing.
get something to what you're looking for. So
S-
like prayer, it's like, please Lord, help Amy survive this weekend.
right.
Whereas if I'm doing spellcraft, I'm gonna put like a concoction together. I'm gonna do my song and dance ritual, if you will, in hopes that my practice is gonna give you good power this weekend.
Right.
Does that make sense? Because that's how I'm reading it.
Yes. Then I think my other confusion is what is the purpose of going to church and reading spells together, if not for the exact same reason that you would get together with a coven?
There is no difference.
Okay. I just was confused about that. And like it's not like trying to equate the others. It's more the like drawing similarities and understanding that we're all kind of focused on the same shit. And then my other thing is not so much a question, but how familiar are you with like what a rosary is for?
None.
So I really only know this because Days of Our Lives is something that I grew up watching, and it's a heavily Catholic show for some fucking reason.
Yeah, I could believe that because my ex husband's family was all about Days of Our Lives.
Yeah, which was hilarious because my family was very much not Catholic, but whatever, I grew up watching that. But from my understanding is you use the rosary to help you keep track of how many times you recite a certain prayer. So like you watch a movie and it says, they go to confession and then they say, "Oh, do 10 Hail Marys and this many blah and blah blah blah." You use it to keep track.
Hmm.
So you pass the beads after you've done one and, you get back to the cross or whatever, and it'll help you keep track of how many times you've done your prayer.
Some people who actually truly have diagnosable OCD have a thing where they have to count so many fire hydrants.
That's, yeah.
I feel like that's just another way of. Hmm, I don't know how I can say it without sounding like a total asshole.
Forgive her for sounding like a total asshole. So do I, because I am absolutely claiming ignorance on this. I'm just curious and kind of proving that I don't understand religions in general, but I'm fascinated by the entire concept. So,
Yeah, I mean, it really is an interesting concept.
yeah.
I've been very open minded. So actually, back in college, I did do.
Hi, Sammy.
Sorry, we got a new
Our
puppy.
our new mascot.
Hi, babies. So back in college, I actually did a science or a college course. It was magic, witchcraft, and healing.
That's awesome.
So it was a religious anthropology class, but it didn't go into like more of the religious. It just became of what we're discussing today. The
Spiritual
yeah.
side, quote unquote.
So I did learn a lot of different cultures, practice different things. So I've been a lot more open minded about different religions, and I think it is fascinating. But there's still a lot that we just don't know. Like you could spend years learning about a religion and not know everything. True story is I did look into Scientology.
Mm-hmm.
Just definitely not for me.
Yeah,
Still on my Tom Cruise though.
such a dork.
I know.
What were you going to say when you thought you were going to be an asshole and you didn't want to say it, but what were you going to say before Sammy came over to get attention?
He kept me out of trouble. He's a good boy. Um, I feel like making people keep count on how many times they do like their rosaries and stuff like that is kind of like a way of like manipulation.
Yeah, I guess. I think for me it's more of that like ritual thing. It's kind of more meditative in my mind
Okay.
where you are doing this thing and you're thinking on, whatever you went to go seek guidance on. And, you're thinking on that and you're thinking on the process and it seems more meditative to me.
But on the flip side too, it's like sometimes they use that, you do something wrong, you have to go say 13 whatevers.
Hmm.
Is that like your punishment?
In this life, according to them. I don't know how that whole forgiveness thing works, but yeah.
Yeah,
But you know, oh, go ahead.
I've got nothing.
Okay. So my other kind of tying it back into like something blasphemous, but witchcraft. You know, in like movies where somebody is, stirring a cauldron
Hmm.
and saying a spell or reciting a spell.
Hmm.
So there is a theory that I saw recently, that I'm pretty sure is backed up and you would find fascinating. We'll have to dive into this when we do some more like historical baking things. But
Okay.
it was put in that that's basically like a rudimentary timer. Like the amount of time that it would take you to recite this certain passage or whatever would be the amount of time that you would need to do X sort of combining or stirring or whatever
Huh.
on a recipe. And that
Huh.
it's sort of the same kind of, meditative, ritualistic thing.
Hey, editing Amy, do me a favor. On this particular moment, put that like what from Ted on my face right now.
But yeah, I saw that recently. And by recently, I mean in the last several years, probably through Tumblr, because that's where a lot of my expansion of knowledge first began and things. Not first began, but I found a lot of shit
That's a
start
really
off from
interesting
there.
thought. I would never have guessed anything close to that.
Yeah.
I mean, at the same time, like, during COVID, we were all taught to wash our hands for what, 20 seconds, and we were supposed to sing the happy birthday song, what, two, three times, something like that.
Yep.
So I
And
guess that makes
then,
sense.
when you're doing like an EMT course or a first, not first aid. What the fuck?
CPR,
That's the one.
the
That's,
Bee Gees, staying alive.
yep, exactly. And anything with that same BPM, but staying alive is one
Yeah,
of the
when
best.
I learned CPR as a lifeguard, we were doing it to the Bee Gees, staying alive,
Mm-hmm.
and I will never forget that because staying alive, first of all, as you're performing CPR,
Yep.
and it's a great song.
Yeah,
I like disco. Shoot me.
exactly. But yeah, that's sort of the same kind of principle of that kind of timing or that kind of,
Huh.
keeping track of shit.
Interesting.
Yeah. So just more like similarities where we thought maybe there weren't any.
And on that note, we want to thank you very much for joining us this week. If you guys have any questions, comments, concerns, comment below. We'd love to hear them. And make sure you're subscribing. We got weekly podcasts coming out, and we would love to see you again next week.
Yep. And if your comments or concerns are about us being confused heathens talking about things that you think that we know nothing about, leave that comment in your brain or out of your mouth somewhere else because we don't care.
Yeah, I mean, we handle criticism, but
Yeah.
at the same time, we admit that we don't know everything. So,
Yeah. If you're trying to convert us, go fuck yourself.
okay, actually, I'm willing to hear you out because I'm curious, but don't be bashing your Bible on me. Here, I will hear you out. I will open my mind and I will sit down with a cup of coffee and hear you out.
I will listen out of anthropological fascination. I am fascinated by people. I am fascinated by the way that we rationalize our world and the things that happen in it and the way that we cope with everything. I love that. But I'm not converting to anything. Even all of my studies into like paganism and witchcraft doesn't really like. I'm fascinated by it. I appreciate it. There's certain parts of it that I really go with, but as far as like belief, I still can't quite get anywhere with any of the things.
Fair points. Well, thanks you guys for watching. Did you fear about this one? And we will see you next week.
Bye.
Bye. Hey, Amy, do you fear about this one? Two religions seen in different light.
Um, the religion doth protest too much.
What?
You've never heard the lady doth protest too much? It's a Shakespeare quote.
Don't do Shakespeare.
I know. I'm gonna be super annoyed when I'm editing this later and I can hear all these tickings. Oh well.
I don't know if you know, but I'm gonna ask anyway. How the fuck do you read the Bible verses? Would it be like Zechariah 14:12?
I love that you're asking my fucking
That's why.
heretic ask.
And that's why I
I
preface.
believe so.
That's why I preface. I'm like, I don't know if you know, but I'm gonna ask anyway.
My heathen ass is probably not the one to ask, but that's my best guess is that that's how you do it.
Sounds kind of wicked. Sounds rock and metal, dude. I can't remember the order of appearance. So I think he went from New Orleans to I think he went from New Orleans to Texas to Florida, and Florida to Phoenix. Something like that. Or maybe he just went from Louisiana to Florida to Arizona.
That makes more sense.
I think I don't know. If only there was like a warning sign that your battery's about to die.
Right? That would be fucking great, but no.
You just started up one day and it doesn't start. You're like, fuck!
Yep.
If only.
Yeah. Mine was harassing me about the tires, and it started, like, extra harassing me that day, so I was like, fuck, I can't put it off, because don't know how much I'm going to be borrowing and putting in my car. And then it's like, oh, hey, by the way, fuck you! And I'm like, cool, thanks. You like my rearranging?
I do.
That was what I was doing this morning, instead of dishes. I also put together a little bowl of Easter eggs. And skulls.
Aw, love it. Mm-hmm. And I see your gold little bunny up there.
Yep.
Love it.
Yep. I wanted to redo it all, but I was like, I want to keep the little Easter things up.
Whoa! This is complicated. In the first book of Corinthians. Listen, I tell you a mystery. We will not all sleep, but we will all be changed. In a flash, in the twinkling of an eye, at the last trumpet. For the trumpets will sound, the dead will be raised imperishable, and we will be changed. For perishable must clothe itself with the imperishable, and the mortal of immortality.
Huh?
That's less confusing than Shakespeare.
No.
Alright, so what was I gonna go with? Hey Amy, you know how we joke about Jesus being a zombie? What if it's not as far-fetched as you think?